Recap what we did on our last show. We learnt that somebody who wants to dominate you puts their hand on top, giving them the upper hand. Every managing director presents this to the staff. Because if I take his hand, what is he forcing me to do? Become submissive. How do you handle someone who does that all the time? Just hold it right there again. Here is the simplest, most effective way. Pleased to meet you once again. Good to see you. We also learnt that when a man sees a woman he really fancies, his body goes through certain physical changes. Here she comes. Beautiful piece of womanhood. He's had a hard day fishing. Watch his body change when he sees her. How many of you have done that? Is he going to... Oh. We saw that when a smoker is feeling confident or dominant, they blow the smoke in an upward direction. Cheryl. Cheryl, I've really enjoyed meeting you here at the party tonight. It's been really great. And I just wondered if you'd like to come back to my place and see my etchings. And we even caught Prince Charles making a pass at a blonde in the crowd with a low-cut dress. Here he is in the crowds. Now, he hasn't noticed the attractive, curvy blonde with a low-cut dress who's just behind the woman he's talking to. He's more intent on making his point by driving his finger home. Now, see what happens when he sees the blonde with the low-cut dress. Oh, hello there, and how are you? And we tested the effects of not conforming in an elevator. And there they all are watching the numbers. Walk in, the difference is you don't turn around, you face them. And you smile. Now, it wouldn't matter what number they pressed when they got in. At the next floor, out they go, every one of them. Here's a variation. You get in an elevator with another fella where there's a third person and face him. There's a good chance he'll face the back. Here's the next. You get in an elevator with a friend and face the back, wait for the next guy to get in. First of all, he thinks he's walked into the back of the elevator. Now, the pressure is too great for him, and he will be forced through your pressure to turn around and also face the back of the elevator. You know, since that original show, and since this book called Body Language was published, this word has become used almost everywhere to describe interaction amongst people. Now, not only that, it's now the name of a dance band, it's the name of a hit record, it's even the name of a massage parlour in Sydney, which I have nothing to do with. Now, they teach body language now in universities and colleges, and practically every sales and negotiation course has it in there. It's even found its way into the latest Australian Macquarie Dictionary as common language. Now, the question is, what makes it so popular? Well, it's because we know from a scientific standpoint that body language signals have 4 times the impact of what you say. Now, that being the case, try this simple test. Next time you go into a hotel, say to the person behind the bar, give me 3 beers. How many beers would you expect to get? 2. Yeah, 4 times out of 5, you'll get 2. Now, just try this test. Everybody join me, please. Finger in the air. Now, on top of your head, on your forehead, on your nose, on your chin. I said to put it on your chin. How many people have got a chin out here? Now, most of you are influenced by what I did, not by what I said. Now, with body language, you've got to look for congruence. That's the first thing. That is to make sure the gestures are agreeing with what you hear, because quite often they don't. Now, say, for example, I don't like you. If I really feel I don't like you, I make this gesture. But what if I'm saying, yes, I really do like you? We're going to look now at a perfect match contestant who's describing the weekend he had with the girl who was his date. What a wonderful girl she was. We're going to show you first in slow motion, then show you what he actually said, and he changes his mind right at the end. Here's the clip. Now, in slow motion, what would you say his attitude was? Positive or negative? Yeah, clearly, he's negative. But he's saying what a wonderful girl she is. What a great time he had. Now, we're going to show you this clip now in fast motion. Listen to what he says at the end when he comes clean. This is the girl.
She's an okay girl, you know, she's... No, she's not. I don't like her.
Number 1 is to look for congruence. That is, the gestures match. Number 2, you've got to make sure you never take any one single gesture and try to say it means something. If I button my coat, what does that mean? I'm cold. It could also mean I'm defensive. That is, I don't like what you just said. Now, what if I grab at my neck and start to jiggle my tie. What does this mean? A bit hot, uneasy, telling a lie. My shirt's too tight. Have a look at these clips and see if you can pick a cluster, a group of gestures. Now, Bob Hawke is buttoning his coat because he's in Brussels on tour and it's freezing. He's actually in a good attitude. Now, contrast that against Mr. Keating, who's about to face an angry press. He starts by buttoning his coat. Now, he's smiling as though he's going to be cooperative. Next, he wrings his hands together as the smile broadens even more. Now, this is a cluster, a group of gestures that tells you that the coat buttoning was negative. And he finishes up by crossing his arms. His face is saying, yes, I'll be cooperative. His body is saying, no way are you going to get any information out of me. Now, in this next scene, Bob Hawke is giving a speech. He's about to start pulling at his collar. Now, what does this mean? Does that mean he's telling a lie? Does it mean he's uncomfortable? Does it mean he's hot? If we freeze the picture, you can see that Hazel's put too much starch in his shirts that day. In this next clip, you'll see another example of a fairly typical cluster. This man, Mr. Ruxton of the RSL in Victoria, is driving home his point on Asian immigration. By using a finger baton, a karate chop, he sits back, crosses his arms, and his cluster says very clearly what his attitude is on immigration, negative. In his next scene, Mr. Hawke is just about to rub his nose. Now, we know people who rub their nose often tell a lie, but he's promising tax cuts next year. Now, was that an actual lie or not? We don't take any one gesture on its own. Let's see what happens. You've got a runny nose. Now, if I scratch my head, it can mean I don't understand. It could also mean I've got dandruff. If I rub my nose, it could mean I've got an itchy nose. It could mean I'm also lying to you. If I hitch my trousers up, it could mean they're too big. It could also mean I can't wait to get back home. You never take one on its own and try to say it means something. You take a whole group called a cluster. So if somebody says to you, it makes good sense to me, I can understand what you're getting at, and by the way, how's your girlfriend? Don't believe a word they say. Let's take a break. We'll be back to talk about how we communicate with our eyes. All the body language signals we use to send to somebody else, there's nothing that sends any signals as powerful as the eyes, particularly where we gaze. Now, we use our gaze to send a number of signals. For example, we use it to send a signal of aggression, where we lock in on someone and our blinking stops. We use it to show interest, that we're keen on someone, by giving them more interest and more gaze than we normally would. We look at them a lot. And we use it to show disinterest, disrespect, by looking away and not looking at them at all. Let's have a look at some of this and see how it's done. Now, notice the Queen, in slow motion here, has locked in on the fellow on the left of the screen. She's quite wrapped in him. Now, the man with the glasses is trying to introduce the fellow's wife. The Queen doesn't want to meet the wife. She plunges forward now. Hello, handsome. She wants to meet him. Now, she smiles, she bows. Now, the man with the glasses wants to introduce his wife. Now, what's the Queen's expression? You're his wife, are you? In this next scene, we're going to slow the Queen down to slow motion about here. She gives a fleeting gaze to this woman who's dying to meet the Queen. Right over the top of her head, she might as well not even be there. She used it to show disinterest. Again, in this scene, we've got two old friends that haven't been getting on too well. Now, Andrew's about to go across and pat Bob on the back and say, good luck next week in the election, Bob. Bob Hawke knows he's there, but turns away and won't look at him. He's using gaze to ignore him. Now, Andrew, pretty quickly, to his credit, gets the message, decides to go on. Here, Bob Hawke has used gaze as a power tool to show disinterest. There are very few situations where you can use your gaze that are as powerful as something like this, wearing dark glasses where the opponent can't see you. Now, this is what world champion Lester Ellis did to his opponent when he recently met him. The opponent couldn't tell where he was looking at all. Now, there are very few people who are interviewers who can handle a gaze like this for 15 seconds with no blinking. When Bob Hawke is in form, he locks in on the opponent, and the opponent wishes he wasn't there, which is the case right here, a very, very aggressive stare. Now, contrast that against Princess Di, mixing in the crowd. Now, a wisecracker's about to make a wisecrack. Here it comes, she hears it, she responds. Now, she appears to be happy, but she looks back at him with this gaze that everybody knows. Look at this. If looks could kill, that's a dead man, for sure. Now, in this next scene, Prince Charles has just pulled the back of her dress so she didn't walk further ahead than he did. She didn't like it. Charles, if you pull my dress like that one more time, you're on the couch for a month, fella. Now, look, he knows he's in trouble. He looks away, but smile for the cameras. Now, another use that we have with our gaze is controlling where somebody's looking. Now, this is particularly important if you're in the sales business, if you're a negotiator, or if you just want to show something to someone. Let me show you an example. Can I ask you to come up? What's your name?
Derek.
Come on up here, Derek. Give him a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. Come on here, Derek. Over here, mate. Okay. Let's do I have something here to show to Derek. My objective is to convince him. Now, I know that 87% of what his mind gets comes through his eyes, 9% through his ears, 4% through the other senses. That is, he's a visual creature. So if I don't control where he's looking, I'm not going to get the message across, right? Here's the way most people do it. Well, here you can see 57,000, Derek, was the amount of money that we decided to put in, mainly because of the fact that most people over that period of time thought that was the right amount. Now, 10 years was it. He doesn't know where to look, the poor devil. He's rubbing his nose. Now, I'm going to use my eyes as pointers, and I'm going to use my pen as pointers to control the information. Watch carefully. Interest, Derek. Now, he sees it and he hears it. Now, the reason we put that in there was because that was the right amount of money to be spread over 10 years, OK? Now, there you'll see a period of 15 years on this loan. Now, the reason we just see what's happening? I'm controlling where he's looking. Now, what happens, though, if he doesn't look up? This time you don't look up, resist. $15,000. Now, that was an amount that we decided to put in for a period of 15 years. So wait a minute. What happens when he refuses to look? He's going to read and not look up. Don't look up at all, resist. $15,000, Derek. That's an amount that... Now, if he doesn't look up, there's no point in me continuing to speak because 87% comes through his eyes. But like fishing, I'm going to try and hook him again. I go down again. 15,000? Now, that's an amount of money. He learns pretty quick. OK, what happens if he takes the information away from me? Now, power players love to do this. He takes it off me now. How do I control his gaze now? He's got it over his side. I use my extendable pen. So now down the bottom, give him a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. You know, research with slow-motion cameras that record eye movements shows something very interesting. And that is that when you're talking with somebody in a social situation, that is, there's no pressure, no tension, you're looking at a very clearly defined area on their face. That area is here to here, down to their mouth and back. 90% of your gaze is directed in what we call the social triangle, and we call that a social gaze. Now, has everybody been in a situation where the atmosphere was friendly? You felt good. All of a sudden, the atmosphere changed and went cold. You felt threatened. Nobody said anything, but it just changed. Has everybody experienced that? Yes. What the camera showed is when that happened, the gaze has changed from this eye to that eye to a third point in the centre of your forehead. That is, if I intentionally look at this area of your face, you'll feel threatened. If I look at your area here, you'll feel it's social. We call that a business gaze. And that's when you put the screws on someone, as they say. And we also found with men and women, when they meet each other, they give each other what's called an intimate gaze. And you can guess what that's all about. It goes from one eye across to the other eye, down to the chest, or lower, and back. Women give it at 1/400th of a second to a man. A man's a lot slower. Let's have a look now at some perfect match clips. He's about to meet her. Greg Evans now is about to step back. He steps back. Watch the expression on this fellow's face. He meets her gaze first, looks in her eyes. Does he approve? Yes, he does. Well, what about the rest of her? How does he like it? There's the answer. Now, in this next scene, this man goes right down to her ankles and up again. He likes what he sees. Steps in front to head her off. Now, he tries to pull her in close. She holds him off. Now, watch his gaze again as she goes past. He goes right down the front again to her ankles. Ooh, yummy. And watch his tongue come out as he licks his lips as a sign of approval. Now, to prove that the girls do this as well, this girl has just met her date on the right-hand side of the screen. She's quite overcome. He takes his glasses off. Now she's going to check him out. Looks at his face. Yes, oh, I like that. What about the rest of him? Well. Now, how can any normal, healthy woman handle men dressed like this? Most of all, how does the Queen handle it? She'd been studiously making sure she looked no other place apart from their eyes until she got to the man second from the end. She couldn't resist it. She looked back and had a good look. if somebody really likes you. That is, they really do like you. The vibes are good, as we say. We have a rapport. Well, there's some physical signs that you can look for. Now, what's your name?
Neil.
Neil. Give Neil a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. Here are Neil and I. He's gone straight for his cuff. Preening. What is there about Neil and I that you can tell that we have a good rapport and the vibes are good? Anything about us you can tell? Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands on your hips. Anything special about us you notice? Put your hands in front of you. Now he's doing the broken fly. Yeah. We are mirroring each other's position. Now this is exactly, put your hands on your hips, this is exactly what people who really get on with each other do quite unconsciously. If you like someone, you'll start to mirror their gestures behind your back. If they like you, they'll do the same. Now the studies show when we're with strangers, we make sure we don't stand like anybody. Try going to a bus stop and doing this. On your hip. Cross your arms. Behind your back. Now he either gets real angry and thumps me or he walks off. He can't handle it. It's too much for him. Give him a big hand. Thanks, Nick. Here's a question. Let's take Greg and Debbie from Perfect Match. Do you reckon they fancy each other? What do you reckon? Be honest. You think they do? Well, if that was true, if you think that they did, slow motion cameras and replay on video would show courtship signals taking place between them, subtle ones. Am I right? Yes. So what we did, we slowed them down, freeze framed them, and here's what we found. We found not courtship signals, but something quite interesting, that when they move and we freeze them, you have an identical standing position. They mirror each other's gestures. Here is the perfect mirror, elbow, tilt, everything. They are like a hand in a glove. They move in synchrony. They're the perfect working couple. They get on extremely well. Their rapport is good. The vibes are good. There's no courtship there, unfortunately for Greg, I guess. You have a perfect mirror position. Now, they wave together at 1/20th of a second rate. We freeze Debbie as she waves. He follows a split second later, and the mirror is formed. When somebody really likes you, they stand and sit like you do. It's also a very effective strategy. If you want someone to see your point of view and get on side with you, you stand like them. As they change, you copy. As they change, you copy. Before long, they say, this character understands me. And you have a rapport. Would you say that Ronald Reagan likes Bob Hawke? What do you think?
Yes.
Okay, no, yes? Here's the answer. You have a mutual sitting position, identical. Now, the leader always starts first. I don't know who did this first, but it's an identical and mutual position. They get on real well, no doubt about it. Now, here Bob Hawke is attacking the Liberal Party. They form a power block to repel this by all sitting in exactly the same position. Here's Prime Minister Nakasone. Beside him is Bob Hawke mirroring his position. They get on real well. Now, Bob Hawke wants to see what's happening on his right-hand side. He can hear a noise. He doesn't want to turn his head. Watch what he does with his eyes. Now, he looks back to the Japanese Prime Minister to see whether he saw him do that or not. Now he goes for another one. Here he goes again. Ooh. Now, you know, husband and wife, man and woman that have been together for a long time, start to behave in very predictable ways. When you've been together as a couple for a long time, you start to move in synchrony. Your movements become the same. You start to mimic each other. Now, after a while, the longer they're together, 20, 30, 40 years, they even start to take on each other's gestures. You even start to look like each other. And then what happens? They buy a dog that looks like both of them, right? Now, with that in mind, I was called in to act as a consultant, and a consultant's a man knows 427 ways to make love but doesn't know any women. They called me in as a consultant in a hotel group. Now, the idea was I was to go behind the registry desk, checking people in, observing the body language of people coming in and out, registering, to see what body language signals they were using to improve the relationships with the staff. Through the door came this couple. Here's a reenactment of what happened. Now, notice as they walk in, we've slowed them down here, they start looking around from side to side to see who recognises them. She's rubbing her hands together in a frustration position. There's nothing mutual about them. They're out of step. Nothing mutual at all. Now, he's gone ahead. Now, realising he's behind because his wife would normally catch up with him, you see, but this girl stayed behind. He stops and gets, come on, catch up, quick. Put on the face. And when they arrived at the desk, I checked them in with the normal technique. Oh, it was a lot of fun, believe me. Got them to fill in the form, I noticed that they kept looking at each other a lot when they were talking, giving mutual and intimate gazes. Married couples don't do this as a form of feedback. They don't need to. They understand how the other person feels. He was being real polite, so they couldn't have been married. And look at this. They checked in as Mr. and Mrs. Smith, real original. Now, the rings on her finger showed that they'd been married, or indicated they'd been married for some time. I figured that they weren't. This was a naughty weekend. The little finger indicating things yet to come. Now, she decided to go off and powder her face. I couldn't resist what I did next. I got a telephone message. I reached across. He looked at me knowingly. I said, "Here's a message from your wife, sir." We'll be back in just a minute. We're going to talk about power plays and how you can handle the dominant boss. See you shortly. Have you ever walked into somebody's office, a bank manager, lawyer, an accountant, maybe your own boss, or you've gone for a job interview, you felt you had something important to say, but the minute you sat in the chair opposite him or her, you felt insignificant and you had nothing to say. Has everybody experienced that? Yes. There's a good chance you've walked into a power play. Now, a power play is where the person set it up to take away your power and prestige and give them a lot more for themselves. Now, the sort of things you might see include power body language. Here's a collection of the sort of things that the person who thinks they're better than you will use to show status. Thumbs poking out of the coat pockets, very popular in most bosses. Palm in palm behind the back is used by those in authority, royal family, Prince Philip and Charles, police officers, in the army, the navy, those who think they're in charge. Standing with your legs spread is a good male aggression power play. Look at this, baby. Yeah, thumbs on the lapel. Rocking up and down on the balls of the feet to get extra height is another typical power play. And putting your hand on top of the other person to get the upper hand is another classic example. Now with that, we're going to have a look now at a power play situation. A man is about to go and ask for a pay rise. He's going to walk into the boss's office. The boss is sitting in his power chair, which has a high back. The higher the back of the chair, the more power people think you've got. I mean, think of the Pope on his great big chair, 18 feet high at the back. You picture him sitting on a stool. That doesn't look right, no power. Let's have a look at what happened with this man going for a pay rise. Now, the boss's office window faces west and it's late in the afternoon, so the sun goes right into your eyes. He has the power desk, which is a real big one to keep you away. His chair moves in every direction. He's got all the power status symbols around his desk as well. The power ashtray, which you couldn't reach anyway, it's too far away. Confidential red files that you're not allowed to look in. Mercedes or BMW or Porsche keyring, and the power phone system. Now here's your chair down on the floor. And you're expected to negotiate. Here comes our fellow for the pay rise. Knocks on the door, walks the plank right down the desk. Talks to the boss. "Boss, I've got an appointment to see about a pay rise." What does the boss do? Ignores him. Now looks over the top of his glasses, condescending. Puts his hand right on top. "I got you, fella, sit down there." The fella sits down with his nose level on the guy's desk. Crosses his legs, turns himself away. The body language is very negative. From this position, he has very little chance of negotiating successfully. The boss still ignores him. Now, when he does talk, he looks over his glasses, keeps the pen in his hand so he can keep writing, ignoring the fellow even more. Now, this poor devil hasn't got a chance of getting a pay rise at all. He's right down low on the floor. Now, the boss goes into the boss's favourite position that shows he's smarter than you. There it is. That was the one gesture that most bosses use for the staff. It's a gesture that most women say they can't stand the boss doing at them, or the husband. Am I right, girls? The one that says, "I'm smarter than you," and then he puts his leg over the arm of the chair, right? You know how you fix that? You say to him, "There's a split in your trousers," and see how... All right, now, let's have another look at a situation where we have a woman going to negotiate for benefits for superannuation for the other staff members. She's aware of power plays. The two things she does different: she knocks on the door and calls the boss's name when she comes in, forcing him to look up so he can't dominate with his gaze. Next, she puts the information on a round table in the corner before she walks to his desk, saying to him clearly, "This is where we're going to do business." Let's see how she handles it. Here he is at the desk. She comes to the door, knocks, calls his name, forces him to look up. Now she puts the information on the table, walks around his desk so he can't get her with that dominant handshake. Gives him a double-hander. That's really rocked him. She takes a step back, he takes a step forward. He's getting out from behind his desk. Now she says, the information is over on the desk, let's go and talk about it. He's not feeling real comfortable about this, he'd rather stay here at the desk. But she guides him across. Now she sits him down, she's got him at a round table, which is the conducive area for making sales presentations, for negotiation. She gets the information now. She's going to use the pen to control his gaze, so he can't look away. She didn't hook him the first time. Now she hooks him the second time and starts to nod her head and he copies. Things are looking good. Now he feels a bit rattled. As a last-ditch effort, he's going to sit back and do his favourite gesture. Here it comes, this'll dominate her. Try that, baby. But she's handled his type before. She knows just what to do. She copies. Now there's two of them doing it. First one to change is a loser. He's had it. We're going to take another break and we'll be back to look at the body language of our leaders. And Charles and Di will try and work out who's really the boss in their home. See you soon. Day for him. She's behind. She's brand new to this. She's not quite sure what she should be doing. She's looking to Charles for the lead. He's encouraging her, giving her instructions. He's clearly the dominant party. She's clearly the second. Now, as their marriage progressed, she started to close the gap, but here she's still a long way behind. Come on, Di, catch up. And she's got to walk to catch up with him. He puts his hand in his pocket with his thumb sticking out because he's superior. And even a little while later in this next clip, she appears to be in front as she walks off, but in fact, his right hand is pushing her in the direction where he wants her to go. See that? Oh, he's pushing her along. This is the way to go. Now let's have a look at today on their recent Italian tour. She's at least 2 feet in front of him here. Now watch this. He grabs hold of the back of her dress. Hey, slow down, you're going too fast for me. She has changed and become confident. Now in this particular scene, Di is about to see a little old lady on the wall. She's going to stop and say hello to the old lady. The entire entourage stops. Now the entourage only ever stops for the dominant person. A few years ago they wouldn't have stopped and waited for her. They would have waited for Charles. Now they're waiting for her. He's walking on his own. In this next scene, she's so far in front of him that he's got to run to catch up with her. She's become confident and dominant. I bet I know who washes and dries the dishes at their place these days, not her. And what about our political leaders? There's no better opportunity for us to see body language in action for politicians than in that historical debate in this country. Now, it's interesting to see what happened. The political commentators said that it was Andrew Peacock's body language that won the debate. Now, it's interesting to see the play. Bob Hawke is one of Australia's most mobile body language exponents. He's good at it, even though he has a repetitive nose touch, eye rub and ear pull. On this particular night, he didn't play it that way. Here's the way it went. He got his right hand to firmly hold his left hand in place so he wouldn't scratch his nose, face or ear because of the negative implications of doing that. He hardly touched his face all night. Now, Andrew Peacock, on the other hand, laced his fingers together, had a funny look on his face. Not a very becoming gesture. It shows and highlights frustration. Now, Bob Hawke's most repetitive gesture was rearranging his notes all night. We sped this up for you to see how it happened. He was unaware of what he was doing, but he was effectively getting his thoughts into logical sequence, and he was coming out in body language by rearranging the notes on his desk. Andrew Peacock, on the other hand, tried to make a strong and powerful point whilst using a limp wrist gesture. Again, Andrew's face looked good, his words were good, but the limp wrist detracted from what he had to say. Now, when Andrew attacked Bob Hawke came back with a fierce attack of pointed finger, tilted head, constricted pupils, and laid home the law. Made it very clear. But when Bob Hawke attacked Andrew Peacock, something different happened. Andrew started to preen himself. He did his coat up, touched the makeup on the side of his face, scratched the sweat under his nose. Oh, you horrible man. Now let's have a look at the strategy for the night. Here was Bob Hawke's strategy, was to address his answers to whoever asked the question. He didn't look at us at home. It was a third-party strategy. We felt as though we were outside looking in on a private conversation between a group of people. Now this is where the debate was won and lost. Andrew Peacock's strategy was to look right into the barrel of the camera, and there was no doubt left that his message was exactly meant for us. We, the voters, felt he was talking to us personally. He looked straight down the barrel and no other place, and this is where the debate was won. Andrew's body language actually got it right. Now, let me ask you all a question. How many of you felt that Andrew Peacock won the debate? Hold your hand up. The majority felt that way. Now hold your hand up if you can really remember anything you had to say. Yeah, very few people, which shows that people listen to not what you say, but what your body says. Somebody asked the question before, how do you know when the politicians were lying that night? Simple, when their lips were moving, they were lying. There's no doubt about that at all. Now, I've got to say, I didn't really mean to say that at all. Now, one of the subtle differences between royalty, in terms of leadership, and politicians is this. You rarely see the royals pointing their finger at anybody, but politicians do it. Now, the finger point comes in two varieties. The baton, where I strike you on the head because you're stupid. And we have the more dangerous one, the dagger, that drives home and digs holes in you. Now, this is dangerous because we know this usually is a signal that you're about to cop a punch. Now, have a look at the screen and see how this works. Here's Bob Hawke using the dagger to drive the finger home. Now, politicians don't normally punch each other, not in public anyway. Now, contrast that against this next scene. On an American television show, the man in brown was daggering his finger at the audience. The interviewer didn't like it. Here's what happened.
I don't listen to you. I've heard enough of you already. I'm telling you, I'm telling these young people.
It's my show, and if you don't knock it off, I'm throwing you out personally. Now, do you hear that, Maureen, buddy?
Yeah.
All right.
Listen.
Now, in this next scene, the man on the right being interviewed is talking about some of the problems of Dutch territories. He's offending a fellow in the audience who's not only using a dagger, but extending it. The man being interviewed makes a nasty remark to him, starts pointing his finger back at this fellow, and here's what happened. This is a result of too much finger pointing. Here's some union confrontation. This woman is using her dagger finger to drive it home into this fella, to tell him where to get off. Now, he knows he's in trouble, but it's not very ladylike for someone to punch. But she's about to attack. The finger goes right home deep. Now, he turns, he knows something's about to happen. She clenches her fist, she steps back, and here it comes, right into his face. Hand up if you enjoy eating chocolate bars. Just about everybody. Now, the research shows quite clearly that the biggest users of chocolate bars have the highest incidence of sexual fantasies. Oh, yeah? Don't believe that? Oh, here's the question. If you owned a confectionery company and you were going to market chocolate for the family man, his wife and kids, what shape would the chocolate come in? A square, just be something like a family block. Would that be it? OK, if you're going to market chocolate to older people, 60s, 70s, pensioners, what shape would you put it in? A frog. A frog? Oh, you put in a frog. But whatever it is, it'd be small, so it's easy to digest, nice to taste. What if you were going to market chocolate to young, healthy people? What shape would you put it in? A frog. A bar. Something like this? Here we have what is known as a phallic symbol. Now, let me explain what a phallic symbol is. A phallic symbol is anything that looks like that. And here we have some subtlety in selling chocolates. Now, you'll find most of the chocolate bars today all have roughly that same shape. The Crunchy Bar, the Vola Crumble, they're all about the same shape generally. But there's one problem. The research shows that women have a psychological problem of eating one of these things in a public place. They really do. It seems that it rates on about the same level as being caught in public eating a banana. Right, girls? Right, right. It's a hard thing. It really is tough. Now, with that in mind, tell me how many of you can remember this commercial. Here we have the ultimate in phallic symbols. The phallic symbols here being the finger in the mouth, the actual flake itself, and the shape of the paper, which is not real good, but it's close. Now, that was an example of subtle selling. Now, back in its days, it was everybody looked at it and threw their hands up in horror. Some of the chocolate bar ads today are more subtle. Some aren't quite as subtle. Now, we're going to have a look at now the difference between subtlety and not so much in subtlety. Let's have a look at a more obvious chocolate bar commercial. Now here, notice the axe going into the groove is the start. Now the phallic symbols are through, here, there it is there. Now not only is it a large and it's the right proportions, but his girlfriend lives in a house made out of these things. Now they need to have those rather large, macho-looking phallic symbols because the bar's not very impressive. It's quite thin. This is one of the only chocolate bars that doesn't end up in the girl's mouth at the end. Now as she walks towards him, the axe flashes on, see it there for a split second. Notice the way he's sitting on it, look. And when she sits down next to him, the ad comes up and he offers her some. The hard bar. Now let's have a look at... let's have a look at one of the more clever pieces of advertising. The most erotic advertising bar on the market today is this one, the Aero Bar. It doesn't look very erotic, but when you film it from just the right angle, it is. Let's have a look at the original Aero Bar commercial. Notice the shape of the plane. I mean, they could have used a helicopter, but they've used that phallic shape. Now, notice what she does on the end of it. Again, this is slow motion, so you can see what happens. Now, she walks towards us with this unphallic-looking bar, holds it up. Now, watch the camera angle. Oh, it looks longer. Now, finally, it flies through the air and ends up where most chocolate bars end up. Now, that was the original Aero Bar commercial. The latest one can only be described as a masterpiece in phallic subtlety. Now, we're going to play the commercial for you in just a moment. I want you to look for the introduction of the red lips that are closed. The Aero Bar arrives. The lips then open just a little. The Aero Bar flies through space because it's heavenly. Then, of course, she eats it. And finally, it's wonderful. At the start, we have an even longer plane, and this time it's red. Here's the new Aero Bar, the masterpiece.
Takes the goodness of milk and bubbles it into milk chocolate to give you a deliciously different, smoother, melt-in-the-mouth sensation. Aero Bar.
Oh, it's wonderful, isn't it?
The aerodynamic taste.
That's worth a round of applause just for Aero Bar. Yeah. Now, not only is the phallic symbol used in chocolate bars, but they're all around us. We use some of them, we wear some of them, we have phallic body language. Here's a sample of some of the phallic things that we do. Most of them you're probably unaware that you do them yourself. Big bunch of keys hanging outside the trousers. Cigar, preferably a long big one. The original phallic car was the E-type Jag, because it had a long bonnet. Nice red one that's been replaced today by the Porsche. You know, most men aren't aware of the origin of shaking champagne and doing this with it. If they did, they'd either do a lot more or none at all. Now, women also have their own phallic behaviour. I bet a lot of you guys have missed something like this when you've taken a lady out for a date. She likes her champagne, but there are signals being transmitted, which the average man doesn't see anyway. Again, a lot of the subtle signals we use, we have no idea we're doing them. If you have a bad habit of doing one of these things, imagine what people think about you. Now, let's have a look at what happens when we put all of this together. We're going to put all the phallic symbols into a situation you'll see. He meets her and they go to dinner. She's waiting in the restaurant. He's arriving in his red E-type Jag. There he is, he's cool. Got the right car, no doubt about that. Does the eyebrows. Look at the size of the bonnet. Big cigar in his mouth. He is super baby. He steps out. Now, let's have a look at this fella. Yeah, he's just right, isn't he? He's got the tight jeans. He's got the jewellery. He's even got a big nose. He looks real cool. There are the keys and the thumb in the belt indicating what could be on his mind. Meanwhile, she's preparing with her symbolic war paint. His whole body is a phallic symbol. He walks right. He smokes right. Look at the shape of his body. Now, in he goes in to meet her. She's having a nice red drink. She knows what colour red does to him, so she wears it. Here he comes. Hey, babe. He sits down, keeps his legs spread apart, gives her intimate gazes. Now, she symbolically undresses by taking her glasses off and sucks on the arm of it. He thinks everything's looking all right here, takes a big, long puff on the cigar. All of a sudden, he gets a feeling things are looking pretty good here. Yes. Things are starting to really hot up here. Now he's giving her the intimate gaze. She's preening and she's looking down. What's she looking down at? She reaches across and... You know, most of you know most things about body language, but if we asked you what you knew, you couldn't tell us. Tonight we've looked at what you know. And to finish up, to make sure you have a sensual night, that things go just the way you wanted them, for each of you, we have an aero bar. Good night.
We promise you more and more great specials. Next week, see one of the strange events that surrounded the death of Marilyn Monroe. The other special is called Andrew, Second Son. It looks into the life of sporting, fun-loving Navy man Prince Andrew. Next on 10 tonight, the Eyewitness News Nightcast, and then gridiron football at its rough and tough best as the Chicago Bears battle with the San Francisco 49ers.